I think today's a good day for Denver. I think today is a positive one for the Broncos because I think it highlights why your organization, for two different reasons, is going in the right direction. Rock bottom has already happened, and now you are on the road to recovery. And I think this move today in cutting Russell Wilson, which is not a surprise, more of a formality, but now that's officially happened, I think that move for two different reasons highlights, well, you are going in the right direction of getting back to a competent, competitive, and soon-to-be championship organization. Reason number one is the Broncos in cutting Russell Wilson have showed you they are not going to allow salary and contract to dictate who plays and who doesn't. It is a true meritocracy with the Denver Broncos now. Because if you look at Russ's contract, what they are paying him, what the dead cap is, it is historic. There are plenty of reasons financially alone that you could argue make it unjustifiable to cut Russell Wilson despite the fact that he can't play. I mean, look at this, right? The Broncos are in trouble here in 2024 in terms of the cap. Because Russell Wilson now, whether he's on the team or not, and now we know he's not, they owe him $39 million. $39 million to not play for the Broncos in 2024. That is what Denver is paying Russ. They also now incur $85 million of dead cap money sitting on their cap, a record. The highest dead cap number in NFL history is now what the Broncos are facing in cutting Russ. Now, they're going to spread that over probably 2 years, so it's not going to be $85 million that they're facing in 2024, but now that eats into the cap in 2025, and that's just another barrier they have to overcome when it comes to getting back on the competitive track. It's not easy. It's historic. So you look at it from just the financial perspective of what the Broncos owe Russ, and also the dead cap money they are incurring, it does not make a lot of financial sense to cut Russ. Broncos didn't care because they realized he's not good enough. Why are we going to, have him on the team? We're moving off of him. And what I also respect is the fact that they did not get tied up with the fact that they gave up a boatload to go get him. If you go back to that trade 2 years ago, and you remember that they gave up 2 first-round picks to Seattle, 2 second-round picks, a 5th-round pick, and 3 players. 8 parts they gave away in draft picks and players to bring Russell Wilson to town just 2 years ago. You could easily say, we gave up all that, all of that draft capital. We have to make this work. Sean, I'm sorry. I know you think that Russ can't play, but we need him on the roster in 2024 because we have to make this work. We gave up too much, and we'd be too embarrassed to move on from him if we cut him right now, even though he can't play, because look at all that we gave up. I give the Broncos a lot of credit for the fact that they don't care. They said, Russ can't play, we don't want him. And it's hilarious, too, that not only do they trade, 8 different pieces to Seattle in order to get Russ on their team just 2 years ago, before he even played a game, they gave him a $242 million contract. $250 million, $161 million guaranteed. And the hilarious part is the contract technically hasn't even kicked in yet. It was an extension. He had 2 years left on his deal, and then they gave it to him. So he played under his previous deal that he had from Seattle in 2022 and 2023. So they cut him before the extension that Denver gave Russ even went into effect. So again, there is all these financial reasons, I should say, as to why Denver easily could have been yeah, Russ so far it's not gone the way we wanted. But let's just give it one more try. 3rd time's a charm. Let's just see if year number 3 works. Sean, year 2, just please give him one more chance here. And if it doesn't work after that, we'll move on. But please, one more chance. Broncos said, all right, well, we'll figure it out. We'll do what we have to do to win. And I respect the fact, because I don't think every team is willing to do this. I respect the fact for Denver that they truly dictate who's on the roster and who's playing based on how well you're playing, not what your contract says. Not every team is willing to do that. They deserve praise, and that's why I would view today as a positive for Denver, in part because you can believe going forward because of this Russ move that they are truly going to have only the best players on the team, and they are not afraid to get out of a bad deal if they give a player a big-time contract in a year or two and it doesn't work. And I think one of the things that I give Bill Belichick so much credit for is the fact that he was not afraid to move on from a player 1 year too early. He kind of saw when players would start to, decrease in their play, and he would get out ahead of it. And there were plenty of times he would get criticized for moving on from players when they were still playing well. How could you trade Richard Seymour? How could you not bring back Ty Law? There are plenty of examples of NFL fans and Patriots fans getting upset with Bill Belichick and letting guys go and not bringing players back or trading them when they were still playing well. And then what would happen? A year or two later, their careers would fall off. Bill always knew. He always got out ahead of it because he realized if we get this player a bad contract and they don't live up to it, that is worse than maybe letting go of a good player a year or two too early. And that's why I give the Broncos credit. They weren't afraid to move on from Russ too early. He did not live up to the contract. Clearly, the 2 years did not go well. They did not make the playoffs in either year. He had an 11-19 record as a starter. They said, contract be damned, we're moving off. That, to me, is a sign of a competent organization. That's why you should feel good going forward here if you're a Broncos fan. Reason number one. Reason number two is, I think this move also dictates or highlights Sean Payton's calling the show. Now, you have GM, you have a president, obviously you have the owners as well. Like, you have a lot of powerful people in that Broncos organization. The guy wielding the most power is Sean Payton, and that is absolutely how it should be. He is still one of the best coaches in the NFL. He's won a lot of games, and he's gotten a lot of good play out of almost every quarterback he's had. I think Denver's making the right move and trusting Sean that he knows what he's talking about, that when he says after just 1 year, look, I tried my best with Russ. I can't get him to play the way I want him to play. We got to move on from him. I appreciate and respect the fact that Denver's willing to, I don't want to say blindly, but almost in a way blindly, listen and follow through on everything Sean Payton says. I give them a lot of credit. Again, not easy to do that when you're paying all that money for us not to play for you. And I think Denver deserves credit for having the stones to not be afraid to admit when they made a mistake and move on. Again, kind of going back to the Bill Belichick thing. That is, I think, that's a problem in the world, really, right? In everyday life, of not being able to admit when you're wrong. But also in the NFL too, right? When you make a mistake, and we're seeing it right now with the Steelers. The Steelers are refusing to admit after 2 years they made a mistake with Kenny Pickett. Drafted him at 20 and thinking he could be the franchise guy. And they now are essentially doubling down on that commitment and refusing to admit they're wrong by having Kenny Pickett be the year 3 starter, despite the fact that you have Russ, who's now available, Kirk Cousins, who's a free agent, and Justin Fields on the trade market. And the Steelers, despite all three of those guys being better than their current starter at the moment, are not interested reportedly in any of the three. The Steelers are refusing to admit they made a mistake in drafting Kenny Pickett. And now they are paying the price where, for me, 2024 is lost. 2024 is over for the Steelers. With Kenny Pickett back as their starting quarterback, they are not making the playoffs. They are not anywhere near a championship caliber team, despite the fact of having a championship caliber defense. So you see it in the NFL. You see it in everyday life. I mean, how frustrating is it, whether it's a friend, a significant other, like when they are wrong and refuse to admit it? Change the goalposts, double down, never admit defeat. Like, it's frustrating when you try to call them out and try to show them, hey, look, you messed up here. Whether it's, if you go to a bar and this bar kind of sucks. No, trust me, it gets better, it gets better. Give it one more hour, I promise you it'll come to life. And what happens? It never does, and you're sitting there with a wasted night because you're at a bad bar, because your friend wouldn't admit, yeah, you know what, maybe this was not the night to go here. Maybe we should have went somewhere else. Whether it's an argument, whatever. One of the worst things I feel like we do as humans is refuse to admit when we're wrong. I get it's a sense of pride. I'm guilty of it as well. Trust me, ask my girlfriend. She will not be shy to tell you that. It's hard to admit when you're wrong, which is why when teams do it, I gain and give them so much respect. And that's why I view today as a positive for Denver. They're not afraid to admit when they're wrong, and they're not afraid to make a move that is financially costly. $39 million of paying Russ, $85 million cap hit. Gave him $250 million in an extension that has not even kicked in, and obviously now that he's cut, will never kick in for Denver. Gave up 5 draft picks and 3 players to bring this guy in, to have him have a losing record, play through 2 coaches, and now be out the door in 2 short years. Denver made a mistake. Complete whiff in bringing in Russ. But they, I think, deserve credit, and today should be viewed as a positive for Denver because they are now on the road to recovery and already are not afraid to admit when they're wrong and make necessary changes fast. You've seen it with the Steelers. I think 2024 is wasted by bringing Kenny Pickett in, and they could lose their best chance to get a better quarterback. I mean, who knows what next year's situation is draft-wise, free agent-wise. Like, this could be their best shot at getting an upgraded quarterback for the next 2 or 3 years. They missed their window. Denver is making sure, whether it's this offseason, next offseason, 2 years from now, whenever it may be, they are making sure whenever that opportunity arises to get the next franchise guy, they are making sure by cutting Russ today, they are not missing their chance. They deserve credit. I view today, despite the embarrassment, despite the fact that, again, this just blew up in your face and will go down as one of maybe arguably the worst trade in NFL history. I do think today overall is a positive for the Denver Broncos, and you should have faith if you're a Broncos fan moving forward that your team's on the right track to being competitive and getting back to being a championship contending